It's the most underrated cars in Need for Speed Carbon, and I'll be covering the top 5. So to rank these, I obviously looked at how fast are they in races, especially compared to cars that are generally recognised and used over them, and how good are they against police. And yeah, expect some cop disposal machines that people never seem to use to be on the list. I also looked at general other things such as how cheap are they, how easy are they to drive, and just generally how good are they as a car. So let's kick it off with our number 5 spot, which goes to the Mercedes SL65 AMG. The Mercedes SL65 AMG is very good against police. It is 2,100 kilos or thereabouts. You can look at the Need for Speed Wiki and check the weight if you want. And this makes it a very, very good car against police. It also, as NFI Gaming Zone did on his channel, he did a drag race. It has the fastest acceleration of any exotic Tier 2 vehicle, even faster than the Elise. However, it doesn't really have any standout track performances, especially compared to the likes of the Cayman or the XK, and the flaws in the handling do begin to show once you race against more competitive Tier 2 cars. So I can understand why you would pass on this thing, not to mention it's very expensive at 125,000 cash for a Tier 2 car. That's a lot of money. Now, I do obviously think that you should choose it over something like the Charger RT, but, the NFS fandom is never going to let that happen. So even though the SL65 AMG isn't anything special and definitely has below average handling, we've seen plenty of cars with either worse handling than the Mercedes or just flat out bad handling that people do use more often, and I definitely think it warrants a spot on the top 5 list. And moving on to number 4, we go up to Tier 3 and we have the Lamborghini Murcielago. Now, handling-wise, yes, it's not great, and certainly doesn't stand out as a front runner in races compared to exotics like the 911 Turbo or the Carrera GT. But, it still handles better than any muscle car, come on, even just about including Corvette. It's also very good against police like the SL65. Not to mention you have the aid of 4-wheel drive, which doesn't necessitate the use of grip tyres and means you can get out of situations that other cars will perhaps become bogged down and completely stuck in. Furthermore, it's also pretty easy to unlock. You only need to beat Wolf in his Canyon Duel, which is pretty much as easy said as done. It's really not difficult. I've overtaken him with a stock SLR. So yeah, either way, the Murcielago, again, it's not anything special, and I wouldn't call it a king of the game or anything like that, but people definitely sleep on the Lambo Murcielago, just like with the SL65, and I definitely think it's worthy of a number 4 spot, purely because it's a bit more competitive in races than the SL65 is, and can get out of boxings better due to being 4-wheel drive. Okay, and moving on to our number 3 spot, we have the Dodge Charger SRT8 from Tier 2. Now, the Charger SRT8 is one that is pretty slept on, as we're getting into some competitive territory here. The Charger SRT8 has equal or superior handling compared to every single other career muscle in Tier 2, modern or classic, not counting the Police Rhino in custom, of course, and it has better acceleration than every single modern muscle car in the game, but it completely smokes the Challenger RT and the Charger RT when it comes to handling and controllability. Furthermore, it's a complete battering ram. I won't lie and I'll say it has a couple of issues getting going because of some wheel slip, but once you do get going, the handling's good enough so you don't have to drop too much speed, and police are gonna have a really hard time taking you down, especially when this car's awesome acceleration comes in to help you out. So yeah, again, the Charger SRT8 is pretty slept on and tends to be overshadowed by the Charger RT, but I would argue it's a better overall car than the Charger RT, with the only thing potentially holding it back being that it is not very unlockable in the career mode. You have to select a muscle car at the start, but judging by how many people do, it shouldn't be that hard for most people to come across. Okay, and moving on to our number 2 spot, this car is some seriously slept on monster, and it's the Mitsubishi Eclipse. The Mitsubishi Eclipse tends to get completely overshadowed by other tuners such as the Clio V6, the Golf R32, and the Mazda RX-7 because of its admittedly poor acceleration. However, if you put the suspension to 3-3-2 and you keep the tyres in the middle, then you are gonna have a seriously nimble car. Don't just take my word for it, try it. I promise, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. You are more nimble than the RX-7. You are more nimble than the Clio V6. You're almost as nimble as the Volkswagen Golf R32. Not to mention that the Eclipse is also very, very cheap, as tuners tend to be the cheapest cars, and that means it is the cheapest car in the whole of Tier 2 entirely. Yet, it is very, very, very useful for its price, especially in canyon races. Far better than any muscle. You're not going to have any trouble beating Angie, Kenji, or Wolf with the Mitsubishi Eclipse. You're in good hands. It can hold its own against cops if it needs to, but due to the poor acceleration, you kind of might want to steer clear though. But still, I mean, how much can you blame the Eclipse there, as tuner cars do tend to struggle a little more in pursuits compared to the exotics and muscles. Either way, the Eclipse is definitely slept on. I definitely recommend giving it a try. It may not be as overall fast as the Volkswagen Golf R32, but it's certainly very fun and a very cheap and easy to control option for newbie players. Now, going on to number 1, and to this day, it's still mind-boggling more people don't talk about this car or reference it, as it is seriously, seriously slept on compared to some other cars around it. This is unfortunately due to the hype and meta mindset that this NFS community has. But as the most underrated car in Need for Speed Carbon, I have the Dodge Challenger concept. The Dodge Challenger concept is actually really, really fun. It's one of the better handling muscles. In career mode, you have the second best handling, that is after the Corvette. Furthermore, it's also easier to unlock than the Corvette, as you only have to beat Angie in her Canyon Jewel, which is very, very easy if you even have a half-decent car. And it's also cheaper than the Corvette too, so you can buy it more easily. It's also more controllable because the acceleration not being so fast, yes, it does make you slower than the Corvette, I'll admit that. But it also gives you more time to think before approaching a corner, and the handling isn't even that much worse than the Corvette. So it's hand down the most controllable muscle in Tier 3. It's also one of the best Tier 3 pursuit vehicles, just full stop. Full stop. You are an absolute rhino with this car. I feel like a rhino whenever I'm driving the Challenger concept, because I can just barge police vehicles completely out the way. Not to mention the wheel slip problem is significantly less severe than with Corvette due to the inferior power. And the acceleration is still good enough so you can get up to speed quickly, especially if you use nitrous. If you use speed breaker with this thing, again, it's completely unstoppable. The Challenger is easily, hands down, a much better all-rounder than the Viper, but people seem to prefer the Viper, which I still kind of don't get. I mean, you prefer a car with the turning of an army surplus tank over a car that's actually well-rounded. Not to mention that the Viper is a huge glass cannon and can't take a lot of damage even though it can dish out a lot, which is certainly not very good, and it also tends to flip too. Challenger? Forget the flipping, forget being a glass cannon, you can take hits all day long. And you can also dish out damage all day long as well. You feel like a Punisher when you're driving it. And rightfully so. Now again, its flaws do show. If you race against a Corvette, you do lose, unless the Corvette driver is completely incompetent. But still, it's much better in pursuits than the Corvette is. Cheaper and easier to get. And it blows my mind it's not mentioned more in discussions about good cars in Carbon. So there you have it, guys. The top 5, in my opinion, most underrated cars in Need for Speed Carbon. And again, there are some cars that you can definitely argue should be on the list. I came close to putting the Mazda 3 on here, for example. Anyways, if you think of any cars that you think should be on the list in place of a car that I put on the list, please leave them in the comments section. And please request any other videos you want to see me make. I know the video essays I've made might not be that accurate. I will work towards improving that, and I'm sorry if they misled you. Anyways, guys, peace out. Drop requests in the comments. Drop any car suggestions in the comments. Drop any replacement card you will replace my cars with in the comments, and peace out.